Hey everyone, Dr. Alex Ritza here, the cycling doc here at Toronto Corrective Chiropractic, our Yonge and Bloor office. And today we're going to be talking about the foot, and we're going to be talking about when to use wedging in the feet. So there are two types of wedging that we'll use when we're doing a bike fit. That's what it's all about today. There are wedges that we use for inside the shoe. This is called a forefoot varus wedge. You could also use it as a valgus wedge. And then there's those little yellow wedges that you'll often see people put underneath their cleats. Insert video or picture here, because I don't have them in here at the office because I forgot them. And those are used for different purposes. So we're going to use these forefoot varus wedges different from those yellow wedges, and I'll tell you why. So we're going to use those yellow wedges when somebody has a leg length inequality. Their legs are literally different lengths, or there's some sort of issue with the angle of their leg that we can't accommodate for with moving their cleat around or adding a washer or spacer to change the position of their cleats. Now, in my bike fitting practice, I almost never use those yellow lifts or those yellow shims in cleats, because I always try to find a different solution, because I rarely find people have an objective leg length discrepancy that we can't deal with in another way, but that's a discussion for another day. So the foot is probably the most important part of a bike fit. If your bike fitter or somebody is not looking at your foot, you might want to think about going somewhere else, because that, of course, is your point of contact, your point of power into the bike. And if the foot is not set up correctly, then the rest of the bike fit is going to be off, and it's going to affect your interaction with the handlebars, your interaction with the seat, and it just won't be right. So in terms of using those little yellow shims between the shoe and the cleat, we're going to use those very, very rarely in my bike fitting practice, and they should only be used for, in my opinion, when there's an objective leg length difference. The two legs are discernibly different lengths and it's affecting the bike fit, or when somebody's legs are angled in a certain way that you cannot get the foot flat on the pedal because of that angle of the leg, and you either can't move the cleat enough, or you can't use move the pedal enough with a washer or some sort of pedal extender. But that's really rare in my bike fitting practice. I think last year, if I did 75 fits, I maybe used them once. I just don't use them that much. But today we're going to be talking about when to use these forefoot varus wedges. So when you look at somebody's foot, let's get this guy off of there. We're going to say that a foot is neutral when the heel bone or the calcaneus and the front of the foot or the forefoot, when they are flat or lined up together, and that the heel bone and the toes are flat with one another or parallel, we'll say that is a neutral foot. When we have it where the big toe is elevated with respect to the heel, that's what we call a forefoot varus deformity. When we have it where the small toe is elevated with respect to the heel, we call that a forefoot valgus deformity. So neutral is when the foot and the heel are lined up with one another and flat. Forefoot varus, the big toe sits elevated. Forefoot valgus, the small toe that is elevated. Now, we typically will see forefoot varus more often. Specialized claims that it's in like 70 or 80% of cyclists. I find it is way, way, way less than that. If you look into the literature that they use to support that argument, there isn't much. I think they pulled the number out of thin air, but what do I know? So if somebody has forefoot varus, which we do typically see more often, again, where that big toe is elevated with respect to the heel, what needs to happen is the foot will also often collapse inwards in order to get those toes flat onto the shoe and flat onto the pedal. Now the problem is that when the foot comes in, the ankle comes in, the knee comes in, the femur comes in, and that can create some issues. It can create some issues where you have more rotation, both at the ankle and the knee, and we know more rotation means more repetitive strain. If somebody doesn't have enough freedom or enough float in their cleats or in their general bike fit, there's not enough redundancy in their movement, then that repetitive strain and that float, instead of being in the equipment, is going to be in the knee or in the ankle or in a muscle, and that's where you get a repetitive strain injury. So in an ideal world, when the foot is pedaling, we want to make sure that the structures are well aligned. Ideally, I want to see a fairly straight tibia with the foot flat on the pedal. So we don't want to see too much inward, outward movement of the knee. And often what we'll do is, if somebody again has that forefoot varus deformity where the big toe is elevated, that's where we'll use this wedge that is thickened on one side here versus the other side. That small 1 degree of thickness, 1.5 degree of thickness, if we put it underneath the big toe, it can help to accommodate for that elevated big toe so that it no longer has to collapse inwards to get the foot flat on the pedal. Now, whenever I'm doing an assessment, we always assess for forefoot varus. If it's really significant, almost every time I'm going to assume that we need these. But sometimes somebody will have forefoot varus that's minimal, and it does not need to be accommodated for with one of these wedges. And sometimes it even makes the bike fit worse if you use these when it's not indicated. So that's where a really, really thorough assessment and somebody who knows what they're doing with the foot and assessing for either forefoot varus or, in the rare case, forefoot valgus, where that big toe, the small toe, is elevated. Assessing for that prior to a bike fit is really, really important, and also important to be monitoring through the bike fit process whether those wedges are needed. Of course, this is a non-custom option. We also have custom options where if somebody wants this wedge built into their orthotic, it's a better option. We can make it softer, more accommodating, more custom to you, and also you don't have to worry about these sliding around or breaking down at the front of the shoe. So when it comes to your fit, if you feel like your foot is not planted properly and flat across the shoe, it could just be an issue with the cleat position, but it also could be some sort of forefoot torsion in the foot. Might be worthwhile getting somebody to check your fit and make sure the cleat is in the right spot and that you do or don't need any wedging. Hope that was helpful, guys. Hope it keeps you riding well. Hope it keeps you injury free. I'll see you next time.